Welcome to Dusk Tales. Here we explore ranger stories, deep forest encounters, and the unexplained events that happen far from civilization. Stories from those who entered the wilderness and experienced something they still can't explain. If you enjoy atmospheric horror and immersive storytelling, subscribe and join us. New stories are waiting in the dark. Story 1. Winter in the Great Smoky Mountains. National Park doesn't look dramatic. It looks empty. The crowds are gone. The campgrounds are closed. The Appalachian ridges roll into gray-blue layers, and the fog settles low and slow, like it belongs there. I had been on night rotation for 3 weeks. Seasonal staffing cuts meant fewer people on patrol. Most nights, my job was simple. Monitor weather shifts, check perimeter sensors, log wildlife movement, and keep the radio line open in case a stranded hiker ignored every posted sign about winter closures. That night was quiet. Too quiet, if I'm being honest. At 2:17 a.m., the radio cracked once, then again, not static. A signal trying to stabilize. I picked it up. Station 4, this is Ranger Eli Mercer. Go ahead. A pause, then. This is Ranger Caldwell, reporting smoke from the North Ridge. Do you copy? The voice was steady. Mid-40s, maybe. Southern accent. Professional tone. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not fear, exactly. Recognition. Caldwell. I had read the archived file during orientation. Ranger Thomas Caldwell. Missing during a winter patrol near Northridge Fire Tower. Official cause, presumed lost during extreme weather event. No confirmed recovery. The tower had been closed after that winter. I kept my voice neutral. Ranger Caldwell, confirm your location. I'm at Northridge Tower. Visibility low. Something's moving below the tree line. There it was. The first detail that didn't sit right. Northridge Tower had no active power source, no operational radio repeater, no maintenance access for over a decade. Yet his signal was coming through clearly. I switched channels. The signal followed. I checked the log. No atmospheric interference, no known frequency overlap. Ranger Caldwell, I said carefully, can you verify your Ranger ID? Silence, then breathing, slow, controlled. Eli, he said, my name. I'd never met him. Eli, it doesn't like the fire. A pause, then the signal cut. No static, no fade, just gone. I didn't report it immediately. That's the part that still bothers me. I told myself it was interference. Old radio echo. Someone playing a joke on a decommissioned channel. But there's no reception up there. And nobody drives those roads in winter. By 3 a.m., I had replayed the call 3 times. The audio file was clean. Too clean. No background wind. No mechanical hum from tower generators. Just breath. Voice. Silence. At 4:12 a.m., it came again. Smoke increasing. No greeting this time. No identification. Just information. From where? I asked. Below. The word stretched slightly, as if he was listening to something else while speaking. I felt the station grow smaller around me. Below what? A longer pause. Below the tower. That didn't make sense. Northridge Tower sits on exposed rock. No cabins, no service structures. Just elevation and trees. I checked the park maps, and that's when I noticed something I hadn't paid attention to before. The tower sits above a geothermal survey zone mapped in the early 1980s. Minor heat pockets, shallow cavities. Nothing significant. At least, that's what the notes said. The radio clicked again. Eli. I swallowed. Yes. It's still here. What is? No answer. Instead, a low sound, almost like wind moving through a narrow space. But there was no wind reported on the ridge. "I'm sending coordinates," the voice said. My GPS pinged. Coordinates appeared. Northridge Tower, active, leave. I checked the timestamp. Real-time transmission. By sunrise, I had a decision to make. Protocol said, report anomalies. But protocol also said avoid unnecessary mobilization during winter closures. And I couldn't explain what I'd heard without sounding unprofessional. So I did what young rangers sometimes do when they want to prove themselves. I packed a field kit, thermal scanner, backup radio, body cam, flare kit, emergency fire starter. If there was any chance someone was up there, lost, confused, relaying through an old repeater, I wasn't going to ignore it. The drive up the access road took 40 minutes. Snow crusted the edges, but the main path was passable. Too passable. No fresh tire tracks, no footprints. The fog thickened as I climbed. By the time the tower came into view, it looked like a shadow cut into the sky. Northridge Fire Tower, 12 years closed, 12 years silent, and somehow transmitting. I parked below the final incline and walked the rest. Each step felt amplified in the cold air. No birds, no wind, no distant highway hum, just stillness. When I reached the base of the tower, I saw it immediately. The access door, sealed, a heavy metal bar installed across the entrance, padlocked. Rust settled into the hinges, untouched. I ran my glove along the seal. No signs of tampering. The lock was intact. From the outside, I stepped back, looked up. The observation platform stood silent against the gray sky. Then my radio crackled. "You shouldn't have come alone." The voice was clearer than before, not strained, not distorted, but different, less human. I froze. "Caldwell?" I asked. A faint exhale. "Fire kept it away." "What fire?" No response. Instead, I heard something else. A sound beneath my boots. Not movement, not shifting rock. A hollow resonance, like air traveling through a deep channel. I knelt, pressed my gloved hand against the ground. Warm. The soil was warm. That wasn't possible. Surface temperature was below freezing. I activated the thermal scanner. The screen flickered, then stabilized. Heat signature. Directly beneath the tower, circular, roughly 30 feet wide, centered below the foundation. My pulse slowed, not sped up. That's the strange part. I didn't feel panic. I felt focus, like the mountain had narrowed down to a single point. The radio clicked again. It doesn't like the fire. This time, the voice sounded closer, not through the radio, behind me. I turned. No one there. The fog shifted slightly between the trees, and for a split second, only a second, I thought I saw movement at the tree line. Not running, not stalking, just adjusting, as if something tall had shifted its weight. I forced my breathing steady. "This is Ranger Mercer," I said into my body cam. North Ridge Tower appears structurally sealed. However, I am detecting subsurface heat anomalies inconsistent with environmental conditions. Keep it professional. Keep it documented. The radio clicked again. "Eli?" Soft, patient. "You need the fire." The ground vibrated, barely, like distant thunder traveling through stone. I stepped back from the tower base. The warmth intensified, and that's when I noticed something else. There was smoke, not rising, seeping, thin strands slipping between cracks in the rock foundation. Colorless, but visible, not drifting upward, drifting sideways, toward the tree line, as if something was drawing it in. I didn't wait. I pulled a flare from my kit, struck it. Red light bloomed against the fog. The smoke shifted instantly. Recoiled. The warmth beneath my boots faded slightly. The radio burst alive. A different sound this time. Not a voice. A layered frequency. Almost like overlapping whispers. Then, faintly, beneath it, breathing. Not mine, and not Caldwell's. Slow, measured, curious. I raised the flare higher. The fog thinned near the tower, and for a fraction of a second, I saw it clearly. The observation platform. The door at the top. Open. That was impossible. The lower door was sealed. There was no other access. Yet the upper hatch was slightly ajar, and something was standing just inside the frame. Not fully visible, just a silhouette against deeper shadow. Too still, too tall, watching. The flare sputtered. The red light dimmed slightly. The silhouette shifted back, out of sight. My radio crackled one last time, and the voice, calm, steady, unmistakably familiar from the recordings, said quietly, "That's not me." The flare burned low in my hand. The upper hatch of the tower was closed again. No movement, no silhouette, just fog drifting through the trees like nothing had changed. But something had. My radio remained silent. No signal from Caldwell, no layered whisper, just the faint static of an open channel. I forced myself to breathe slowly and think like a ranger, not like a scared kid on his first winter rotation. Facts. The ground was warm. There was visible vapor escaping from the foundation. The thermal scan confirmed a circular heat pocket directly beneath the tower. And the radio signal originated here. If Caldwell wasn't inside the sealed structure, then the signal wasn't coming from above. It was coming from below. I circled the tower base carefully. The concrete footing met exposed rock on the north side. On the eastern side, snow had partially melted, revealing a shallow depression I hadn't noticed from the path. Not a sinkhole. More like a collapsed pocket in the soil. Small enough to ignore, large enough to matter. When I knelt and brushed snow aside, warm air rose through the opening. I angled the thermal scanner inside. Heat signature intensified, deeper than surface level. There was space down there, not natural erosion. Something more structured, a cavity system. The Appalachian mountains are old, older than most mountain ranges on Earth. Ancient rock, ancient shifts, ancient pockets carved long before any ranger tower stood here. I remember the geothermal survey notes. Minor heat pockets, shallow cavities, nothing significant. The kind of line you write when you don't want to budget for further study. My radio clicked, soft, almost polite. "You found it." The voice was not Caldwell's anymore. It still used his tone, his cadence. But the pacing was slightly off, like someone repeating a script without understanding the emotion behind it. "Who is this?" I asked. Silence. Then, "Below." The word stretched longer this time, not distorted, just wrong. I stepped back from the opening. The warm air carried a faint mineral scent, not smoke, not sulfur, just damp stone and something metallic. I considered calling dispatch, but what would I say? There's a warm hole under a closed tower and a voice on the radio that shouldn't exist? Instead, I did what Caldwell's journal, what little I remembered from orientation, suggested he would have done. I built a fire. There's a flat rock clearing about 15 feet from the tower foundation. I cleared snow away and stacked dry kindling for my pack. The wood caught quickly, flame bright against gray fog. The change was immediate. The vapor seeping from the foundation thinned. The warmth beneath the ground dulled slightly, and my radio remained silent. For the first time since 2:17 a.m., there was nothing. No signal, no whisper, no breath. just wind brushing treetops. I stayed there for nearly 20 minutes, feeding the flame, watching the tower. Nothing moved, nothing opened, no silhouette returned to the hatch. Slowly, I allowed myself to believe there was a rational explanation. Geothermal venting can cause radio interference. Heat pockets can distort signal travel. My mind could have filled in the rest. Isolation does that. Mountains do that. But then the fire cracked sharply, and one of the larger branches shifted out of place. The flame dipped, just slightly, and instantly my radio came alive. He's letting it go out. The voice again, layered now, 2 tones overlapping, one familiar, one deeper. I added another log quickly. The flame rose. Static dropped. The signal weakened. My hands weren't shaking anymore. That was the strangest part. I wasn't overwhelmed. I was observing, testing, and something beneath the tower was responding. The depression in the snow widened, not dramatically, but subtly, as if warmth from below was loosening the soil structure. I approached again, carefully, flare ready this time, instead of relying solely on the campfire. The opening had expanded enough to reveal stone beneath a dirt layer. Cut stone, not naturally fractured, carved, old reinforcement blocks set into the rock. Someone had known about this cavity, and someone had built around it. I angled my light inside. A sloped descent, narrow, reinforced with wooden beams darkened by age. This wasn't a natural geothermal pocket. It was a tunnel, predating the fire tower, predating modern park boundaries. The radio crackled softly. "Eli." This time, the voice sounded tired, almost relieved. "If you're hearing me, keep the fire going." That was Caldwell. Not layered, not distorted, just him. "How?" I asked quietly. No answer, only static. Then faintly, "It listens." The word faded before I could respond. I didn't enter the tunnel immediately. Instead, I documented everything. Body cam running, thermal scan active, GPS logging. If this was a forgotten access tunnel from early forestry operations, it needed to be recorded. If it wasn't, then documentation mattered even more. I secured the fire with additional wood from my kit, enough to burn steady for at least an hour. The radio remained quiet while the flame held strong. I approached the tunnel opening slowly. Warm air brushed my face. The slope descended at about a 30-degree angle. Stone walls reinforced intermittently with timber supports. No visible footprints, no recent disturbance. But at about 10 feet inside, I saw something that made me stop. A metal ranger badge, old design, polished silver dulled by time, the name etched across the center, Caldwell. I didn't touch it immediately. Instead, I crouched beside it and scanned the area. No signs of struggle, no torn fabric, no debris, just the badge. Placed, not dropped. My radio whispered faintly. He tried to seal it. The deeper tone returned, not loud, not aggressive, just present. He tried to burn it out. The words carried no anger, no emotion, just statement. I backed away from the tunnel, returned to the fire, added another log. The flame surged higher, and something inside the tunnel shifted. Not a rush, not a charge, just a change in pressure, like air being displaced deeper underground. The ground beneath the tower vibrated once, low, contained, then still. I sat by the fire longer than I expected, watching the tower, listening to the wind, letting the daylight strengthen around the ridge. Morning fog began to thin. The Appalachian layers emerged, blue ridges fading into distance. It looked peaceful, almost impossibly peaceful, which made what was happening beneath the rock feel even more disconnected from the world above it. My radio clicked once more. Soft, barely audible. "Eli," Caldwell's voice, clear. "Don't let it follow you down." A pause, then quieter. "It learns." The signal ended. This time it didn't return. I made a decision. I would not descend alone. I would not ignore it. And I would not let the fire go out until I understood what Caldwell had meant. I marked the tunnel entrance with bright survey tape from my pack, logged coordinates, took photos of the badge. Then, before leaving, I did one more thing. I placed an additional flare at the tunnel mouth, lit it. The red glow filled the entrance. The warm air receded slightly, and for a split second, I heard something exhale. Not in pain, not in anger, just awareness, like something acknowledging the light. I stepped back toward the fire. The tower stood still above me, closed, silent. But I knew now, the signal hadn't come from the tower. The tower had been built to watch it. Backup arrived just after noon. 2 senior rangers, professional, calm, skeptical in the way experienced people tend to be. I showed them everything: thermal readings, audio logs, the sealed tower door, the tunnel entrance, Caldwell's badge. They listened without interruption. No jokes, no dismissal, just quiet assessment. One of them, Ranger Holt, had been stationed here the year Caldwell disappeared. He stared at the badge longer than I expected. "We never found this," he said softly. I asked if there had ever been record of a tunnel beneath North Ridge Tower. Holt hesitated, then nodded. "Unofficially, yes. We didn't go down immediately. First, we kept the fire steady. That part wasn't negotiable. Even in daylight, even with 3 of us there, the air around the tower felt different when the flame dipped. Not threatening, not hostile, just attentive. Holt finally told me what had never made it into the public report. When Caldwell went missing in 2011, he had been responding to repeated smoke sightings from the ridge. No wildfire alerts, no lightning strikes. Just hikers reporting thin columns of vapor near the tower base. Caldwell had radioed in several times that night. His last transmission had been strange, not frantic, not confused, just deliberate. He said the fire was working, Holt explained. Then the signal cut. Search teams found nothing. No tracks beyond the tower, no sign of a struggle. And the tower was sealed shortly after. "Budget decision," Holt added. "At least that's what they told the public." I didn't ask what they told themselves. We entered the tunnel together, fire burning outside, portable lanterns active, body cams running. The descent was narrow but stable. Old timber beams reinforced the ceiling. Stone walls showed chisel marks, hand-cut, decades old. Maybe older. The warmth increased gradually as we moved downward. Not uncomfortable, just present, like standing near a heated stone wall after sunset. About 30 feet in, the tunnel opened into a chamber, circular, reinforced with stacked rock, and at its center, a metal ring set into the floor, charred around the edges, not fresh burns, old ones, layer upon layer, like something had been ignited there repeatedly. There were markings along the wall, carved dates: 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014. Earlier years faded with time, each date accompanied by the same phrase, "Keep it lit." No signatures, just instruction. Holt stepped closer to the center ring. "That's not park construction," he said quietly. No, it wasn't. This wasn't modern forestry infrastructure. This was older. Maintenance logs from before digital record-keeping, from before standardized reporting. The kind of thing that gets passed down verbally or quietly forgotten. My radio crackled once. All 3 of us froze. Static. Then, breathing. Layered. Slow. Curious. The lantern light flickered, not out, just slightly dimmer. The warmth intensified, not dramatically, but noticeably. And then, the voice, not Caldwell, not anyone we knew, calm, measured, repeating something almost perfectly. "Keep it lit." The words echoed slightly off the stone, but they didn't originate from the walls. They came through the radio, from beneath us. Holt looked at me. "Fire," he said. We didn't argue. We didn't investigate further. We climbed back up, carefully, without running, without panic, just steady movement. When we reached the surface, the campfire had burned low. Not out, but close. The flare at the tunnel mouth had faded to a dull ember, and the fog had thickened again around the tower. I added wood immediately. Holt struck a second flare. Red light filled the clearing. The warmth beneath the ground lessened. The radio fell silent. No layered breathing, no repetition. Just wind, just trees, just mountain air. We didn't close the tunnel. We reinforced it. Not sealed shut, not collapsed. Not collapsed, just stabilized. And at the center of that stone chamber below, we built something deliberate. A controlled burn site, permanent, monitored, scheduled. Not dramatic, not secretive, just consistent. The tower itself remains officially closed. Maintenance restriction, structural concerns, that's the public explanation. And it's not entirely untrue. But now, every winter rotation includes one additional line item. Northridge Fire Watch, 2-hour flame minimum, documented, logged, maintained. A week after that first call, I reviewed the archived audio again, frame by frame, layer by layer. There were 2 distinct vocal patterns overlapping in the final transmission before I reached the tower. One was Caldwell, confirmed by voice analysis against old Ranger interviews. The other didn't match any file in our system. But here's the detail that still stays with me. The deeper voice didn't initiate the phrases. It repeated them, slightly delayed, learning cadence, learning tone, mimicking structure. It never created new words. It only echoed existing ones. Testing, refining. That's when I understood something Caldwell might have realized too late. The tower wasn't built to observe forest fires. It was built to sit directly above that chamber. High ground, visibility, a constant presence of flame during active watch seasons. For decades, rangers had kept fires burning up there. Signal fires, warmth fires, routine, tradition, and maybe containment. Because whatever exists beneath North Ridge, it doesn't rush, it doesn't attack, it doesn't chase, it listens, it learns, and it reacts to light. I still work winter rotation. I still monitor the ridge. And sometimes, late at night, when the fog settles just right, the radio clicks once, soft, testing. But as long as the fire burns steady, it stays quiet. Story 2. I've worked the Appalachian backcountry for 6 winters. Storms don't scare me. Isolation doesn't scare me. Silence doesn't scare me. What scares me is when the silence starts answering back. It was late January, 1998. My name is Caleb Mercer, and I was assigned to winter watch at a remote ranger station deep in the Appalachian Mountains. The nearest town was 40 miles south. In good weather, that's a manageable drive. In a blizzard, it might as well be another continent. The forecast called for heavy snow. Nothing unusual. We've ridden out worse. But by sunset, the wind changed. If you've ever been in the Appalachians, when a storm turns, you know the difference. it stops sounding like weather and starts sounding intentional. By 7 p.m., the roads were gone. By 8 p.m., the power flickered twice before switching to generator backup. By 9 p.m., I lost contact with the secondary relay tower. Still routine, until I checked the perimeter camera feed. There are 4 cameras mounted outside the station. Old equipment, analog feed patched into a small monitor above my desk. Grainy, black and white, reliable enough. At 9:17 p.m., camera 3, facing the south clearing, flickered. I leaned closer and saw footprints, fresh ones, leading in a circle around the building. The snow was coming down hard. No way tracks would last long. These were recent. But there was something wrong with them. They didn't approach from the woods. They didn't lead away into the woods. They formed a slow, careful ring around the station, like something had walked around me and then vanished. I told myself what any ranger would tell himself: wind distortion, snow shifting, maybe a lost hiker earlier in the day. Still, I put on my coat. Before stepping out, I glanced at the camera monitor again. The tracks were gone, completely erased, not filled in, gone, as if they'd never been there. I stood at the door for a long moment, hand on the handle, and then I laughed at myself. Cabin fever, that's all. I stepped outside into the storm. The wind cut straight through my coat. Snow stung my face. The clearing was empty, no movement, no tracks, no signs of disturbance. Just untouched snow. I did a slow circle around the building with my flashlight. Nothing. When I came back inside, I locked the door, double-checked it. And that's when I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. The snow on my boots wasn't fresh. It was partially melted, like I'd already been outside longer than the 30 seconds I remembered. I brushed it off. Adrenaline plays tricks. I poured coffee, sat at the desk, forced myself to focus on paperwork. At 10:02 p.m., the radio crackled. Station 12, confirm status. I picked up the mic. Station 12, operational. Storm heavy but stable. A pause. Then the dispatcher, voice steady. Copy that. Just confirming. We received a signal earlier indicating a possible emergency. I frowned. Negative on emergency. Another pause. Understood. Must be interference. We signed off, but I didn't feel better because I hadn't sent any signal. At 11:14 p.m., camera 1 flickered. I almost ignored it. Then I saw him. A figure standing at the edge of the clearing. Still, facing the station. The resolution was poor, but I could make out the outline of a ranger coat, hat, broad shoulders. He looked exactly like me. The wind whipped snow across the lens, distorting the image. I leaned closer. The figure didn't move, didn't shift, didn't blink, just stood there, watching. My throat went dry. I slowly turned my head toward the window beside me. Nothing outside. I looked back at the monitor. The figure was closer now, halfway across the clearing. I never saw him walk. He was simply closer. I felt the strange urge to step outside. Not fear, not panic, recognition, like seeing someone waiting for you. The radio crackled again before I could move. Station 12? I grabbed the mic too quickly. Yeah. There was hesitation in the dispatcher's voice this time. Caleb, we need you to confirm your location. I laughed softly. You know where I am. Silence. Then, Caleb, a hiker team found a ranger body near mile marker 42 an hour ago. My stomach dropped. Identification matches you. The wind howled against the walls. I stared at the monitor. The figure was now standing directly in front of the station door. Caleb? The dispatcher pressed gently. I'm here, I whispered. but my voice didn't sound certain. The dispatcher inhaled slowly. The ID badge, the winter tag. The dental record match was preliminary, but he stopped. We thought it was you. I couldn't speak. On the monitor, the figure tilted its head, just slightly. Curious, like it was listening too. I don't remember deciding to open the door. One moment I was sitting, the next I was standing in the snow. The storm was calmer now, or maybe my ears were ringing too loudly to hear it. Across the clearing stood the station. Its windows glowed warm and yellow. And inside, I saw myself, sitting at the desk, staring at the monitor. Frozen, I tried to move. My body felt heavy, delayed, like I wasn't quite synced with myself. The version inside slowly lifted its head and looked directly at me through the window. No surprise, no fear, just understanding. Behind me, the mountains loomed dark and silent. And that's when I felt it. The weight of the place, the old stillness of the Appalachians. These mountains have watched people come and go for centuries. Loggers, hunters, rangers, families, wanderers. They endure. We don't. The wind brushed past me, gentle now, almost comforting. And in that wind, I understood something I never had before. The mountains don't like emptiness. When someone stands alone too long, they fill the space. Inside the station, the other me stood up, walked calmly to the door, and opened it. From his side, he stepped into the snow. As I felt myself being pulled backward, not falling, not dragged, just replaced. The world blurred, the snow softened, the wind quieted, and I was back inside. Sitting at the desk, hands on the table, heart steady. The monitor showed an empty clearing. The radio was silent. My boots were dry, as if I had never left. The storm passed by dawn. Clear sky, fresh snow, no tracks. The road crews reopened the highway by mid-morning. At 9:30 a.m., I received a call from headquarters. They confirmed the body found near mile marker 42 was misidentified. Another ranger, similar build, same winter gear issue, family notified, case closed. I acknowledged the update. Professional, calm. But when I walked outside to inspect the clearing, I noticed something strange. A second set of footprints, leading away from the station. Only one set leading back. I followed them halfway across the clearing before they vanished at the tree line. No drag marks, no disturbance, just absence. I finished my shift 3 days later. Never mentioned the cameras, never mentioned the radio call, never mentioned seeing myself outside in the snow. But sometimes, when winter rolls in and the wind changes tone, I wonder something. What if the body near mile marker 42 wasn't misidentified? What if the mountains made a copy before I ever arrived? And what if the version of me sitting here now is simply the one that stayed? Story 3. Visitors kept telling us the same thing. Not that they saw something, not that they heard something, but that something was watching them. From above. At first, I thought it was nerves. The Appalachians can do that to you. The canopy is thick. The ridgelines feel close. Sound carries in strange ways. Then I found the marks, 30 meters above the ground, and I made the mistake of looking up. My name is Tyler Boone, and I was assigned to the Northern District of the Appalachian backcountry in the late summer of 2003. That part of the forest doesn't get heavy traffic. No gift shops, no scenic overlooks, just narrow trails, steep hollows, and old-growth timber that blocks out more light than you'd expect. Most visitors who make it up there are experienced hikers. which is why the complaint stood out. They weren't dramatic. No one claimed they were chased. No one claimed they saw a monster. They all said the same quiet thing. It felt like something was watching us. From the trees. The first report came from a married couple from Ohio. Calm people. Rational. They described walking through a clearing when the wife suddenly froze. She didn't hear anything. She didn't see anything. But she felt eyes on her. Not from the woods at eye level. From higher. When she looked up, she said the leaves were still. Too still. Like the wind moved around the trees. But not through them. I logged it as unease. Forest psychology. Happens more often than people think. The second report came 3 days later. A college kid hiking solo. He said he heard something pacing him. But not beside him. Above him. He described it as footsteps that didn't touch the ground. That one bothered me. Because animals move through canopy all the time. Raccoons, squirrels, even black bears occasionally climb. But bears are heavy. You hear branches break. He insisted it was deliberate, measured, matching his pace. I told him it was probably wildlife. He didn't argue. But when he left the station, he didn't look relieved. He looked embarrassed, like he'd broken an unspoken rule by admitting it. The third report is when I started taking it seriously. An older man named Frank Delaney, a retired surveyor, came in with photographs. He said he'd noticed unusual markings while mapping an unofficial trail near Cedar Hollow. He handed me printed images. Vertical gouges, deep, running up the trunk of a white oak, and they didn't stop at eye level. They continued, up and up, until they disappeared into the canopy. I asked him how high. He said he used range estimation based on tree height. About 90 feet, he answered quietly. That's roughly 30 meters. No black bear makes parallel claw marks 90 feet up a tree. No human does either. I hiked out to Cedar Hollow the next morning. The air was heavy, late August humidity pressing down through the canopy. Cicadas buzzing. Light barely touching the forest floor. The oak stood exactly where Frank described. Tall, thick trunk, healthy bark. And the gouges were real. 4 long vertical lines, perfectly spaced, like something had gripped the trunk and pulled itself upward. I touched one of the grooves. The wood inside was pale and fresh, recent. I stepped back and craned my neck. They went all the way up. No broken branches, no splintering, just clean, deliberate scoring. I took photos, measured spacing, logged coordinates, still telling myself it had to be something explainable. Then I heard it, a shift above me. Not wind, not random movement, a slow redistribution of weight. I froze. Every ranger develops a habit. When you hear something unknown, you don't look immediately. You listen first. The forest had gone quiet, not silent, but reduced, like it was holding its breath. The movement came again, higher, directly overhead. Against my better judgment, I looked up. At first, I saw nothing but leaves layered against sunlight. Then I saw the outline, a shape, not large, not towering, humanoid, crouched across 2 thick branches, long limbs folded and tight, its head tilted slightly downward, watching me. My brain tried to convert it into something ordinary, a trick of shadow, an oddly shaped limb. But then it shifted, slow, controlled. It didn't leap, didn't scramble. It simply moved one arm and wrapped its fingers around another branch. The fingers were too long, too thin. I stepped backward without realizing it. And when I blinked, it wasn't there. The branches still swayed slightly, but the figure was gone. No falling leaves, no cracking wood, just absence. I stood there for a long minute, then another, and something else occurred to me. The gouges, they weren't random. They were aligned directly beneath where the figure had crouched, like ladder rungs. I returned to the station with more questions than answers. I didn't write humanoid figure in the report. I wrote possible arboreal wildlife. That night, I stayed late. I wanted to review older incident logs. Patterns matter in wilderness work. What I found unsettled me. Over the last 20 years, scattered through reports, were small notes. Unusual canopy movement. Scraping sounds overhead. Visitors reporting vertigo. Sudden anxiety when looking up. No conclusions, no follow-ups. Just fragments. Around 11:40 p.m., while reviewing logs, I heard it. A soft thud on the station roof. Then another, measured, like footsteps. Except the station roof is metal. Animals crossing it make sharp sounds. These were dampened, intentional. I stepped outside with a flashlight. The night was warm. Crickets humming, stars bright. The roof was clear. No branches close enough to allow access. The building stands alone in a gravel clearing. I scan the tree line. Nothing. As I turned to re-enter the station, I felt it again. That awareness, from above. I looked up slowly and saw leaves moving, not with wind, but with synchronized shifting, as if something moved across the multiple treetops without descending, tree to tree without touching ground. I went inside, locked the door, and that's when the sound changed. It wasn't on the roof anymore. It was in the trees around the station, circling, one treetop, then the next, then the next. No broken branches, just redistributed weight and pacing, above ground level. It lasted 10 minutes, then stopped. The following morning, I returned to Cedar Hollow with climbing gear, against protocol. I needed to know. Using a harness and ascenders, I climbed partway up the oak with the gouges. 20 feet up, the bark was scarred deeper. 40 feet, the gouges widened. 60 feet, I found something caught in the bark. Fibrous material, dark, almost plant-like, but flexible, not fur, not fabric. I bagged it. At 80 feet, I stopped, because the branches above me were carved, not scratched. Carved, deliberate notches cut into wood, forming shallow depressions, resting points, nests, and in one of them, more of that fibrous material, interwoven with leaves, camouflaged. I realized then something important. It wasn't just climbing trees, it was living in them. The trees weren't obstacles, they were structure. And then I saw something that changed everything. The bark around the nest area wasn't dead. It wasn't damaged in a way that killed the tree. In fact, the growth around the gouges was accelerated, as if the tree had adapted, like it tolerated the intrusion, even reinforced it. A symbiotic response. I descended carefully, mind racing. That night, the footsteps returned. Closer, lower. And at 2:13 a.m., something landed softly on the roof. Not heavy. Controlled. It remained there for a long time. I didn't go outside. I watched through the narrow upper window. And finally, a silhouette crossed the moonlight. Lean, elongated limbs. Head slightly forward, moving on all fours across the roofline. It paused, turned its head toward the glass, and I felt certain it could see me. Not aggressively, not angrily, just aware. Then it crouched and leapt, not down, outward, landing in the nearest tree without a sound. Over the next week, reports increased. Visitors describing dizziness when staring at the canopy. One camper claiming branches lowered slightly when she stepped beneath them. We inspected those branches. They were indeed lower, bent, not broken, as if weight had trained them downward. And that's when I understood the final piece. It wasn't Bigfoot. It wasn't a wandering predator. It was an arboreal hunter, one that had evolved alongside the trees. The trees didn't fight it. They grew with it, supporting weight, thickening bark where claws gripped, bending branches into pathways. The forest wasn't just habitat. It was partnership. And the reason people felt watched from above was because they were. But not by something passing through. By something rooted into the ecosystem, something that never needed to touch the ground. The last encounter I had was 3 weeks later. Dawn patrol, mist hanging low. I felt that familiar sensation. And instead of looking up, I kept my eyes forward. That's when a shadow passed across the fog, not cast from the side, from above, moving parallel to me. Matching my pace, I stopped. It stopped. I started walking again. It moved again. And I understood the rule. It hunts awareness. It tests attention. Looking up invites acknowledgement. Acknowledgement invites proximity. So I didn't look. Not once. When I reached the clearing near the station, the pressure lifted. The shadow dissolved. The trees stood motionless. I filed my final report carefully, recommended restricted access to Cedar Hollow, increased canopy monitoring, no mention of humanoid figures, no mention of symbiosis, just patterns, anomalies, precaution, because some ecosystems don't need disruption, they need distance. Even now, years later, when I hike dense timber, I remember that sensation. And I follow the simplest rule that kept me safe. Don't look into the trees, because sometimes the forest isn't just sheltering something. It's supporting it. And once you understand that, you'll realize the ground was never the danger. It was always above you. Thank you for listening to Dusk Tales. If you enjoyed this story, consider subscribing for more ranger encounters, deep wood stories, and unexplained experiences from the wilderness. And if you have your own story you'd like to share, you can send it to the email in the description. The forest holds more secrets than we understand. And sometimes, those secrets follow people home. Until next time, stay safe and stay out of the dark.